G'day, it's Damned here, and I want to welcome you to another session in our tutorial series on the Ruleset Wizard, building our Cyberpunk RED ruleset. Now I want to start off this video by saying that some of these videos contain a lot of coding, and you might think, oh, I got the wizard, so I didn't have to do the coding. So the wizard is, firstly, it's going to help you build the layout of all these different tools. Secondly, its ability to code or to facilitate your code and to make certain functions easier is growing all the time. So things that I do in this video today may not be necessary to do in as much manual effort or as much manual detail in the future. And even now, some of the stuff I've done in early videos, I'm going to have to go back and revisit and look at whether I want to pull them back in and do some more the Ruleset Wizard way. So getting that out of the way, what we're going to do today is start off some stuff in the combat tracker. So what I'm going to do is, in the combat tracker, I want to put in our maximum hit points, our current wounds, our head armor, and our body armor fields. So there's a few things there, and we'll have a look at the character sheet first and see how they link. So our hit points max here links with our max hit points here, and we can see that they're both 40. Our wounds here is 5. Now there's no spot on the character sheet for wounds. There's a spot over here for current hit points. So at the moment I've just created a hidden field over here, and I've done that because I'm still trying to decide what the best way to do this is, and I just want this field on here so that I can keep the two fields in sync and I can do some other math in the background. Later on we'll decide whether to keep that field and make it hidden, or whether we do this in a different way, or we actually make that field part of this hit point string here and we actually include the wounds. Then we've got our head armor stopping power, which correlates to this field on a character sheet, which is in a list that really complicates things. Our next one is the 11 here matches with the armor stopping power of our body armor. And once again, that's part of a list. I can create additional entries in here, although practically the only other entry that I want in there is a shield, and shields will come at a later stage. So let's go back and look at the Ruleset Wizard and see what's involved here. So the first thing I've done is I've created a new window called the Combat Tracker Host, and I've set its height to 400, width to 500, so that's a little bit bigger than default. I think it's 300 and 350 by default. I have set the merge to join and the name to Combat Tracker _host. That will merge with Core RPG and set these wider parameters. I think I've also set some minimum height and minimum width also, so the same values. I've set them to be at least 500 wide, which is the main thing I want to do. I've then created a new window called CT_entry. Alright, and that's when we have a look at that, we've got a bunch of different things. So I want you to go through the sample project that ships with the Ruleset Wizard and grab all of these pieces out, because there's quite a lot of stuff there. We build the window frame, and let's ignore the code here because that's going to come in a later video. I've set the height to 45 and I've set the width to 450. These are preliminary figures. They will change, guaranteed, over time. Again, I've set it to join. I've given it a name of CT entry, and I don't need to put these in here at this point. I think the minimum width will actually fill to the size of the Combat Tracker host, but we'll come back to that later. The next thing I've added is a custom control called a left control there's some values here, and I want you to grab them from the included sample project, because there's quite a few details in here. Perhaps open up 2 copies of the Ruleset Wizard and open up your project in one, and on the right side of the screen open up the sample project and duplicate the initial parts that they have here, and that will include the left control, it will include the link icon, which is again a custom control, it will include the right anchor, another custom control, and it will include this CT name non-ID. Now, other fields that are in the sample project is the order field, which is our init result field. So that's where we're tracking initiative in the combat tracker, and we want to, so that will be included. Now the other fields that they use in the sample wizard sample project we don't need. So ours, we're going to add hit points max, or HP underscore max. Very importantly, we set the advanced template to number underscore CT underscore crosslink. That is not one of the drop-down options. You'll need to add that in. And that is a special template that helps set up the links between the combat tracker entry and the character sheet entry. We've got nothing else there. All this is doing is keeping those 2 fields linked together. And we have the same for our wounds. So wounds, it's a number underscore CT underscore crosslink. It's got a name HP underscore wounds, and those values there, we want to keep them in sync with our character sheet, or between our character sheet and combat tracker. Now, that requires some additional code, and we'll get to that soon. And then I've got two more fields, and these are for the stopping power of your head armor and the stopping power of your body armor. Now, I'm going to run through this code. It's quite complex, and I'm going to also reiterate that the code is all here done for us now, and all we're doing is going through the comments and looking at what each line means. This took me a long time to do. It may take you a long time, it may take you a short time if you get this stuff and understand it. For me, this takes a long time. So don't be disheartened if you really struggle with this stage. I put lots of debug in there, and I work through it. I roll back, I work through it a different way, and I roll back, and I keep working at it until I understand what might work. And sometimes I go about things a longer way than is necessary. I don't have coding background, I don't have any coding training, and I tend to just do things very slowly, and I keep working at them until I get them. So let's have a look. What we've got is on this first field, which is a armor underscore SP underscore head. So in our armor list, it doesn't specify head or body, it just says armor underscore SP, and that's because elsewhere in that record it nominates the location is where we store the head and the body values. But we've got one here called armor underscore SP underscore head, and another one called armor underscore SP underscore body. Both of them are number underscore CT underscore crosslink. Really important. Do that, get that set up straight away, otherwise you'll get everything else in place and you'll still be getting errors in your console, and you won't know where they're coming from. So let's have a look at the code we run. So firstly, we do an on-init, so it runs, in the on-init we run the onValueChange function, all right, and we do that so that it resets all the values to correct ones right at the start of the session. Now, the next line of code, which is the first line in our onValueChange function, we are setting up a variable node CT, and we're getting window.getDatabaseNode, which is the node of the PC or NPC in the combat tracker. So this entry here in the combat tracker has its own ID and it's under the combat tracker node. This character here, which is essentially the same entity here, is actually a different node under the car sheet node. So they're actually unique, but we've got a whole bunch of linking tools that keep them synced together so they appear to be the same entry. We then go and retrieve from the database two values, so S-class and S-record, and we're doing that from node.ct. Sorry, we're doing that from node.ct, and we're retrieving the link value. So let's go and have a look in the database and see why we've chosen to do it that way. So this is my db.xml from that current campaign. Now we've got our combat tracker node. It's a list. Our first entry in here is our character, Kanto Ryu, and we can see here there's a link, but it's got two values. Alright, so what we need to do for these, it's got a class and a record name. And what we're essentially after is the character sheet that's associated with this combat tracker. Alright, and we can see it's character sheet ID 001. And we can see up here character sheet 0001 is our same character. So what we're trying to do is retrieve the data from link, which is it's going to return two values, class and record name, and so we're going to store them into separate variables. And we're just going to call them string class and string record. So when we if this function db.getValue from node.ct, which is up here, on the child node link, if it returns two values, which it should because there's two in there, it's going to assign the first one to S-class and the second one to S-record. We're going to work with S-record. And what we're doing here is for each result in, that's put out for something, comma V. So normally that would be KV or key and value. When there's an underscore, it means that you're discarding the first result. The first result's not needed, we're just going to discard it straight away, not even bother keeping it. So we're working with V, so in pairs, and then we're searching the db.getChildren of our S-record, and our S-record is the character sheet node rather than the combat tracker node. So we're searching the character sheet node for the armor list. And our armor list in our character sheet node has more than one value. We can see we've got two items of armor. We've got some head armor and body armor. This is a list. So we have to iterate through the whole list because we're wanting to break them down into head and body. When I look at the database, so we're up in the car sheet node because we've gone back to the car sheet node. We're in record number 1. We're looking in our armor list, and we can see we've got two entries here, 1 and 2, and the first one is head armor, and the second one is body armor. So when we cycle through this list, we're going to get more than one value back. So as we cycle through the list, we're going to check if v.getChild armor location, so we're going to check firstly if armor location is actually a record. So if I create a new blank item in that list and I don't fill out the armor location field, then this query or this function, if v.getChild armor location, if it doesn't return a value, then this whole next section of code is going to get skipped. So normally hoping the players fill out their stuff properly, so they add a piece of armor and they complete the stats in there. So once we've checked that armor location is actually valid, we're then going to check if the value of armor location in our car sheet node is equal to head, And if it is, then we'll run the next piece of code. The next piece of code is going to retrieve the value. First it's going to find the value in the combat tracker, and then it's going to find the value on the character sheet, and it's going to assign that to this first part of the equation. So the stopping power from our head armor on our character sheet node will get applied to our stopping power for head in the combat tracker node. And then we repeat that same process, but this time we're checking for the body. So we're looking for any armor that has the location body. And if we find some, then we're going to go through the same thing. We're going to prep the CT field that's set up for armor SP body, and we're going to retrieve the value of armor SP for the body armor in the character sheet and apply it to the combat tracker node. And then there's a number of closing statements. So it's quite involved, but what happens then is at this stage, the first time the combat tracker is opened, the two red fields here will be initialized with data from this list. So if we have another character here, we've got Konak, and Konak has just head armor with stopping power of 3. Let's drag this character into a combat tracker. We didn't get any value set in here because it's only doing it when the combat tracker is initialized at this point. So let's reload the table. And when I launch the combat tracker, it's going to grab this value because it's happening on initialization. So we go back and check Konak, and has an armor, head armor, and has a stopping power of 3. So that's working as required. Our next video is going to be more work on this combat tracker. It's going to set up some more links here, and again there's going to be some funky code. Thank you for joining me in this tutorial session, and please, I really look forward to seeing whatever it is that you guys are making. I'd love to see more rule sets appearing out there, more character sheet systems available for other people on Fantasy Grounds.